What happens when Hollywood's most straight-talking tough guy meets late-night television's most pretentious host? You won't believe what unfolds when Mark Wahlberg sits down with Stephen Colbert, and the gloves come off in the most explosive interview meltdown we've ever witnessed. This isn't your typical celebrity chat. This is a full-blown confrontation that left audiences speechless and had security scrambling. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash in the most dramatic exit in late-night history. Last night's episode started like any other. The familiar late show theme music played, the audience applauded on cue, and Stephen Colbert delivered his opening monologue with that signature smirk plastered across his face. But what nobody in that studio audience could have predicted was that they were about to witness television history in the making, and not the good kind. Tonight, we have with us Mark Wahlberg, Colbert announced, his voice dripping with that condescending tone his critics know all too well. Actor, producer, and apparently now a restaurant entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Mark. Wahlberg walked out with his usual confident stride, waving to the crowd. He looked relaxed, maybe even a little amused by Colbert's introduction. The handshake between the two men seemed cordial enough, but if you watched closely, and we did, you could see the tension in Wahlberg's jaw, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thanks for having me, Stephen," Wahlberg said, settling into the guest chair. "Though I gotta say, that introduction felt a little backhanded. Apparently now a restaurant entrepreneur? Like it's some kind of joke?" The audience laughed, thinking it was playful banter. Colbert's smile faltered for just a second before he recovered with that practiced late-night host charm. "Oh, no, Mark. I think it's great that you're diversifying. From Calvin Klein underwear model to Oscar-nominated actor to burger flipper. It's very American dream of you." The insult was wrapped in silk, but it was an insult nonetheless. Wahlberg's expression shifted subtly, his posture straightening. "Burger flipper? Really? You know what, Stephen? I've been doing this for 30 years. I've worked with Scorsese, David O. Russell, Peter Berg. I've built businesses from nothing. But I guess to you that's all just a punchline, right?" "Hey, I'm just saying it's interesting career trajectory," Colbert replied, that infuriating smirk never leaving his face. "From Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch to, well, let's be honest, some of your recent movie choices haven't exactly screamed prestige cinema, have they?" The audience was starting to sense something was off. The laughter became more nervous, more scattered. This wasn't the usual playful back and forth between host and guest. This felt personal, hostile even. Wahlberg leaned forward in his chair, his Boston accent becoming more pronounced as his irritation grew. "You know what, pal? I've made some great movies, and I've made some movies that were purely for entertainment. But at least I'm not sitting behind a desk every night making jokes about people who are actually out there doing things, creating jobs, taking risks." "Ooh, shots fired," Colbert said, but his voice had an edge to it now. "Tell me, Mark, when you say doing things, do you mean like that time you committed a hate crime as a teenager? Because I feel like we should probably address the elephant in the room here." The studio went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Wahlberg's face went from annoyed to genuinely angry in a heartbeat. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white with tension. "Are you serious right now?" Wahlberg's voice was low, dangerous. "You're gonna bring up something from when I was a kid? Something I've apologized for countless times? Something I've spent my entire adult life trying to make up for? That's your idea of comedy?" Colbert shrugged, seemingly oblivious to the fire he was playing with. "I'm just saying, it's interesting how Hollywood has this selective memory when it comes to certain people's past mistakes. Some people get canceled for a tweet. Others get to star in Transformers movies." "This is unbelievable," Wahlberg muttered, shaking his head. "You sit there in your ivory tower, making jokes about real people's lives, real people's struggles, And you think you're some kind of moral authority? What have you ever done besides make fun of people who actually get their hands dirty? The tension in the studio was palpable now. Audience members were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, some looking toward the exits. The camera operators were getting conflicting signals from the control room. Keep rolling or cut to commercial. Colbert's mask was starting to slip. The practiced charm was giving way to something uglier, more petulant. Well, I've built a pretty successful career in comedy, Mark. I've won Emmys, I've hosted award shows, I've written books. I didn't need to assault anyone to get where I am. That was the moment everything changed. Wahlberg shot to his feet so fast his chair rolled backward. That's it. That's fucking it. You think you're better than me? You think because you went to some fancy college and learned how to make jokes with a team of writers that you're somehow morally superior? Mark, please, let's keep this professional, Colbert said, but there was genuine concern in his voice now. He'd clearly pushed too far and was starting to realize it. Professional? You call bringing up my biggest regret, something that happened when I was 16 years old? Professional? You call making fun of my businesses, my career choices, professional? Wahlberg was pacing now, his voice rising with each word. I came on this show as a favor, to promote a movie, to give your audience a good time, and this is how you treat me? The audience was completely silent now, watching this unprecedented meltdown unfold in real time. Some were recording on their phones, others were looking around nervously for security. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a genuine confrontation between two grown men, and it was getting ugly fast. But what happened next would push this confrontation from uncomfortable to absolutely explosive, as Colbert made the critical mistake that would seal his fate and send Wahlberg over the edge. Instead of backing down or attempting to defuse the situation, Colbert doubled down with the kind of arrogance that has made him so many enemies in Hollywood. He leaned back in his chair, that insufferable smirk returning as he watched Wahlberg pace like a caged animal. Mark, 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 Colbert said, his voice dripping with condescension. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This anger, this volatility. Do you see how quickly you resort to aggression? Maybe that's why your past keeps following you around. Maybe it's not really in your past at all. The words hit Wahlberg like a physical blow. He stopped pacing and turned to face Colbert directly, his eyes blazing with fury. What did you just say to me? I'm just making an observation, Colbert continued, clearly enjoying the power he felt he had in this moment. Here you are, on live television, screaming and cursing because someone asked you a legitimate question about your criminal record. It makes people wonder if you've really changed as much as you claim. The audience was in complete shock. Several people had gotten up and were heading for the exits. The camera crew was getting frantic signals from the control room, but nobody seemed to know whether to cut away or keep rolling. This was unprecedented territory for late-night television. Wahlberg's voice, when he finally spoke, was eerily calm. You know what, Stephen? You think you know me? You think you can sit there and psychoanalyze me based on some research your interns did on Wikipedia? Let me tell you something about yourself. Oh, this should be good, Colbert replied. But there was less confidence in his voice now. Something in Wahlberg's tone had shifted, and it was deeply unsettling. You're a fraud, Wahlberg said, his words cutting through the studio like a knife. You built your entire career on playing a character, pretending to be this conservative pundit, and when that stopped being profitable, you just switched teams. You don't believe in anything except your own importance. You mock people's faith, their values, their struggles, and you think it makes you clever. Colbert's face was turning red. I don't have to listen to career advice from someone who's made a living playing the same tough guy in every movie for 20 years. At least I'm honest about what I am, Wahlberg shot back. I don't pretend to be some intellectual, some moral authority. I'm just a guy from Dorchester who worked hard and got lucky. But you're a parasite. You feed off other people's success, other people's failures, other people's pain, and you package it up as entertainment for people who want to feel superior without actually doing anything. The studio was completely silent except for the hum of the cameras and the air conditioning. Even the band members were staring in disbelief. This wasn't just an argument anymore. This was character assassination, mutual destruction happening in real time. Colbert stood up from behind his desk, his composure finally cracking completely. You want to talk about parasites, Mark? Let's talk about how you've made millions of dollars playing the same working-class hero while you live in a mansion in Beverly Hills. Let's talk about how you've turned your criminal past into a marketing tool, how you've monetized your redemption story. At least I earned my money, Wahlberg snarled. I didn't inherit it. I didn't marry into it. I didn't get it from Daddy's connections. Every dollar I've made, I've worked for. What about you? You went to fancy schools, you had fancy connections, and you've spent your entire career looking down on people like me. People like you? Colbert laughed bitterly. Violent criminals who get rewarded with movie contracts? Yeah, I do look down on that. The moment those words left Colbert's mouth, you could see he knew he'd gone too far. His face went pale, his eyes widened slightly, but it was too late. The words were out there, captured on live television, witnessed by millions of viewers. Wahlberg went completely still. The anger that had been radiating from him like heat suddenly crystallized into something cold and dangerous. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than all his previous shouting. Did you just call me a violent criminal? On your show? On live television? Mark, Colbert started, but Wahlberg cut him off. No, don't you dare try to walk that back now. You just accused me on national television of being a violent criminal. Not used to be. You said I am a violent criminal. You just committed slander on live TV, you arrogant piece of garbage. The legal implications of what Colbert had just said were starting to dawn on everyone in the studio. Crew members were looking at each other with wide eyes. The producer was frantically making hand signals from the wings, but it was too late to stop this runaway train. I was referring to your past, Colbert said weakly. His confidence completely evaporated. I wasn't saying you're currently— Bullshit, Wahlberg exploded. You know exactly what you said, and exactly how you said it. You just destroyed your career, and your network's legal department is probably already having a heart attack. But, you know what? I'm glad you showed everyone who you really are. Wahlberg began walking toward Colbert's desk, not threateningly, but with purpose. Colbert actually took a step backward, his face now completely drained of color. The host, who had seemed so confident in his ability to humiliate his guest, was now faced with the reality of what he had unleashed. This is what happens when you mistake cruelty for cleverness, Wahlberg continued, his voice carrying clearly through the silent studio. You thought you could bully me, embarrass me, make me look bad for your audience's entertainment. But you overplayed your hand, Stephen. You got so caught up in trying to destroy me that you destroyed yourself instead. Security was starting to move in from the wings, but they seemed unsure of what exactly they were supposed to be doing. This wasn't a physical altercation. This was something far more devastating. This was one man methodically dismantling another's reputation and career in front of a live audience. Colbert made one last desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. Mark, let's just take a breath here. We can edit this, we can— But Wahlberg's response would be the final nail in the coffin, the moment that would make this confrontation legendary and seal both men's fates forever. Edit this? Wahlberg's laugh was harsh and bitter. Stephen, you just committed actionable slander on live television in front of millions of people. There is no editing this. There is no taking this back. You just handed me the biggest lawsuit, victory in entertainment history, and you're worried about editing? The reality of the situation was finally hitting everyone in the studio. The producer in the wings was on his phone, probably with the network's legal team. Camera operators were still rolling, afraid to stop without direct orders. The audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what would undoubtedly become the most talked-about moment in late-night television history. Colbert's voice cracked as he tried one more desperate gambit. "Mark, come on, we've all said things in the heat of the moment. Can't we just—" "No," Wahlberg cut him off with finality. "There is no we here. There is no mutual responsibility for what just happened. You made a choice. You decided to destroy someone's reputation for entertainment, and now you're going to live with the consequences." He moved closer to Colbert's desk, and the host actually flinched. The power dynamic had completely reversed. The man who had started the evening as the confident, controlling host was now cowering behind his desk, while his guest stood over him, like an avenging angel. "Let me explain something to you about the real world, Stephen," Wahlberg continued, his voice steady and measured. "The world outside this little bubble you live in. When you call someone a violent criminal on national television without any evidence, without any current basis for that claim, that's called defamation. And when you do it with malicious intent, which your entire performance tonight has demonstrated, that's called slander." Colbert opened his mouth to respond, but Wahlberg wasn't finished. "I've spent 30 years rebuilding my life, building businesses, employing thousands of people, supporting my community, raising my children to be better than I was. And you tried to destroy all of that in one night for a few cheap laughs. Well, congratulations, Stephen. You just bet your career and your network's money on the worst hand in television history." The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the crew members had stopped moving, frozen by the intensity of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a celebrity meltdown. This was a reckoning. Wahlberg straightened up and looked directly into the camera. "To everyone watching at home, you just saw something that doesn't happen very often in Hollywood. You saw a bully get called out for his behavior. This man spent the last hour trying to humiliate me, bringing up my past mistakes, mocking my businesses, and finally crossing the line into outright slander." He turned back to Colbert, who was still standing behind his desk looking like he'd seen a ghost. "You know what the difference is between me and you, Stephen? When I screwed up as a kid, I owned it. I apologized. I changed my life. I tried to make amends. But you're going to spend the next few years in court trying to explain why you thought destroying someone's reputation was entertainment." Wahlberg began walking toward the exit, but he wasn't done. He stopped and turned back one final time, his voice carrying clearly through the studio. "And another thing, all those jokes about my movies, my businesses, my career choices, every one of those projects employed hundreds of people. Every restaurant I open creates jobs. Every movie I make, even the ones you think are beneath you, provides work for crews, actors, stunt people, caterers. What do you create, Stephen? What do you build? Besides your own ego?" The devastating accuracy of the criticism hung in the air like smoke. Colbert, for once in his career, had absolutely nothing to say. The master of witty comebacks and cutting remarks stood mute, defeated by his own arrogance. "I came here tonight as a courtesy," Wahlberg continued. "I could have been anywhere else in the world, but I came here to help your show, to give your audience a good time. And you repaid that courtesy by trying to destroy me. Well, mission accomplished, Stephen. You destroyed something tonight. Unfortunately for you, it was your own career." With that, Wahlberg ripped off his microphone and threw it on the floor. The sound echoed through the silent studio like a gunshot. He began walking toward the exit, his footsteps the only sound, in the cavernous space. As he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one final time. "Oh, and Stephen? Next time you want to bring up someone's past mistakes, maybe take a look in the mirror first, because after tonight, you're going to have plenty of your own to answer for." The studio doors slammed shut behind him with a thunderous crash that seemed to shake the entire building. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Colbert standing alone behind his desk, his face a mask of shock and defeat. Finally, someone from the control room called for a commercial break, but the damage was done. The most explosive confrontation in late-night television history was complete. Stephen Colbert, the man who had built his career on destroying others with his wit and sarcasm, had been systematically dismantled by a guest who refused to be a victim. As the crew scrambled to figure out how to end the show, as producers frantically called executives, as social media began exploding with clips and commentary, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a career-ending disaster for a host who had finally pushed the wrong person too far. The king of late-night comedy had been dethroned by his own arrogance, and Mark Wahlberg had walked away victorious, leaving behind a studio full of stunned witnesses and a host whose empire was crumbling around him. The confrontation was over, but its consequences would reverberate through Hollywood for years to come.